Hello everyone, I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. We are visiting today with a couple who have just a very interesting occupation here in Wadsworth. So let me introduce you to Ron and Sharon Caffin.
Hi.
It's so great to be with you today, and I was just so surprised to find out that we have sheep farmers right here in Wadsworth. And Ron and Sharon, this is just fascinating to me, the fact that you are sheep farmers, but neither of you come from a sheep farming family. Ron, what's your background?
That's right. No, I grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland, and yeah, there's no farming there.
No farming there. And how about you, Sharon?
I grew up on a farm in Virginia, but we raised beef cattle. We did not raise sheep, so this is a new experience for me.
And did either of you go into farming as even a side business or anything?
No, we sort of fell into it.
So what did you do with?
Well, what happened was we were living in West Akron, and for various reasons we wanted to move farther west, and I wanted a century house. So,
I didn't.
And she didn't. And I saw an ad in the newspaper about the century house, and we came out to look at it, and we just fell in love with the house. This house was built in 1848, so it's been around for a while. And when we bought it, the farm had just been broken up into lots. So we had no intention of ever having a large plot of land, but we ended up with 10.5 acres for the house. But the barn was on a separate lot. It was 5.5 acres. And we walked through the barn and realized it would be torn down if we didn't buy the extra lot. So we ended up with 16 acres of land.
So you had 16 acres of land, including a barn, and nothing to do with it.
And no intentions of farming, none whatsoever. Just had land. So.
Well, Sharon, what was your profession?
Well, originally I was a research chemist for the Glidden Paint Company, so maybe I'm not supposed to plug them, but yes. And then I changed professions and became a high school chemistry teacher. So at that time, when we bought the farm, I was still a research chemist.
Research chemist.
Yes.
And Ron, what was your background?
Well, I'm an attorney. So, yeah.
The person least likely to become a farmer. So, yeah.
Certainly not anything that when you were in law school you thought, oh, gee, when I get tired of being a lawyer, I'm going to be a farmer.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Well, you're specifically sheep farmers.
Right.
How did you get into sheep farming?
Should I tell this one?
Yeah, you better.
When I was working at Glidden, I had a good friend named Diane, and she and her husband raised sheep in Litchfield, just west of here. And they had this little orphan lamb named Katie, and they didn't want to put her down. They couldn't really keep her. So they asked me if I would take her as a pet. So we did, and she was hilarious. She would come to the back door and go bah. So she was and follow us around all the time. And that was fine. And then one day Diane says to me at work, Sharon, my husband and I think you should have more sheep. So we've got a couple of lambs. We're going to sell you a couple more lambs. So they brought the lambs out. And at that point in time, the 2 lambs went to be with Katie. And she never came to the back door again. They became like a flock. And one of those was a male. And we just started having lambs. And if you raise goats or sheep, they multiply very quickly because they typically have 2 births. So you go from having 1 to having 3, and then you go from having 3 to having 6 or 8. I can't do the math real fast. So you build a flock very quickly. Well,
your friend Diane suggested this all, kind of strongly suggested that you take in these lambs. What was Ron's reaction?
he was pretty positive about the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
He didn't know what he was getting into. See, I had grown up on a farm with animals. I knew what we were getting into. So, but we enjoyed it. We loved having the baby lambs. It was just a thrill.
Right, and we were already putting up hay, so it wasn't a function. We had something to feed the animals.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a problem.
Right.
When you say that you were already putting up hay, are you saying then that you had hay growing on the property?
Yeah, we have 10 acres behind us that is a hay field. And the first year we were out here, we had no idea what we were going to do, and there's 2 dairy farms on the street. And one of the dairy farmers, we contacted him and asked him if he would mind putting up the hay, because Sharon was going crazy. She didn't want to lose any hay because...
You don't let hay go to waste when you're a farmer.
Right. And then the next year, we called up the farmer, and it had been a wet season, and he told us that he would put it up, but it would be a long time before he got to it. And Sharon said, no, the hay's going to go bad. We can't wait that long. So she said, I know how to put up hay. All we have to do is buy the equipment. So in 1 week, we bought a tractor, and we bought an antique cutter and an antique baler and an antique rake. No, we didn't even have a rake, did we?
Yeah, we
did.
bought that rotary
that
rake.
rotary rake, yeah. And we started putting up hay. We didn't have a wagon. We loaded everything on the back of a pickup and took it into the barn and started putting up hay.
It was pretty disastrous. We spent a lot of long nights out
Oh, boy.
fixing equipment that was
balers.
breaking.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So, and all of our equipment that we bought was like from the 60s. So it was like 40-year-old equipment. So it wasn't in very good shape. So
Well, either of you, did you have experience in maintaining farm equipment? You're laughing, Ron.
no, but this man he's a mechanical wizard, so he can fix anything.
Yeah.
He's really good at reading and watching YouTube videos, so
Yeah.
he can figure out how to fix anything.
Buying manuals and figuring out what has to be done. And when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I was always tinkering with cars, so I had some idea of what I was doing. So.
Yeah.
Boy, that just sounds like such an antithesis of what we think of a lawyer.
Yes. Yes.
I call him the man least likely to. If you know him as a lawyer, you'd be really surprised to know that he wears bibbed overalls at the farm. And if you know him as a farmer, you'd be really surprised that he wears a suit and tie to work. So,
Right.
He lives sort of a dual life. So,
Well, that keeps things interesting.
very interesting.
It does.
Very interesting. He loves it. And, he grew up with no farming in his background, and I sort of drug him here, kicking and screaming, into farming. But I would say that at this point in time, he probably loves farming even more than I do. So he just, I think he likes to fix things. Maybe that's part of it. He just likes to fix things.
Like you like to fix things and you like to see things grow.
Yeah. I mean, initially it was fixing things. I mean, the reason we got this house was because when we lived in West Akron, we had a house and there was nothing to fix.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted an older house because I love tinkering, fixing things around the house. And I've done a lot of work here, so.
I think the other thing for both of us is that we both were in professions where you didn't always see a final result. It's an ongoing sort of thing. Where when you're selling hay, because we sell hay to some horse people who have horse stables around here, and there was something very satisfying about growing the hay, putting it in the barn, and then selling it to other people, and having an actual transaction, which was I think it made us both feel like we were being productive.
Right. Plus, it's really nice to be totally out of control, because there's so many rules and everything that everybody lives by, but when you're a farmer, you're totally out of control. You can't control if the machinery is going to work. You certainly can't control the weather, and you certainly can't control when lambs are going to be born. So it's like it's sort of a good feeling, yeah.
Well, when you say that, I'm thinking when we were scheduling this interview, it all depended on when the lambs were going to be born.
Right.
And I'm so glad that we're able to do that.
Yes.
Now, besides the lambs, do you have any other animals on the property?
Yeah, and we have 6 or 7 chickens, laying hens, and we have 2 ponies.
And the ponies, are they strictly recreational?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
They're more lawn ornaments than anything else. We got them for our 3 granddaughters, and our 2 older ones are not really interested in riding that much. The younger one is. The young one is. Yeah, they may change their mind.
Yeah.
But,
And we have a barn cat that keeps the barn free of mice.
Right.
And I know I was greeted by a dog when I got
Oh,
out of the car.
We have our border collies, and when you have to go into the barn sometime, and the dogs precede you, and the sheep want to have nothing to do with those dogs, so they all
Go in the
huddle in a
corner.
corner. So I can work in there without having to worry about it.
I used to tell people that the reason we have sheep is because Ron wanted to have border collies, and the only way you can justify border collies is if you have sheep. So that was part of the rationale for having the sheep. So.
Right.
So the dogs really earned their keep.
They do earn their
They do.
keep. They do.
They don't actually know what they're doing, but they have a faint idea, just whatever instinct they have, because none of them were trained properly.
We've had a lot of border collies over the last 28 years. These are not our best sheepdogs. We've
No.
had much better sheepdogs in the past.
Yeah.
So we've had sheepdogs that we could just say, we could let the sheep out in the yard, and the dogs would keep them in the yard. And then we could say, put the sheep back in the barn, and those dogs would just take the sheep and put them back in the barn. So we have had dogs that could do that, but
So-
not these two.
Yeah.
So even the dogs work hard around here.
They do work hard around here. They always have. So.
And it's got to be a rough job, a hard job. It's certainly an all year round job.
It is for the most part. Our adult sheep we take down to the farm in Virginia to graze
In the summer.
in the summertime, and we bring them back to lamb. So
The hardest work we do is putting up the hay.
yeah, oh for
And
sure.
anybody who's watching who's ever put up hay knows that it's a hot, you do it in the hottest part of the summer. The hay scratches you. It's just a grueling job. Luckily, we have all 3 of our children live nearby, and they've all married people who love farming. So they all come over, and it's sort of a family, almost like a party when we put up hay, because they like doing it. So.
Oh, that's great to
It
have
really
family
is.
close by. Well, how about we go out and take a look at these sheep and you tell us what you have and
Okay.
all that.
Sounds good.
So we're going to move over to the barn now. Well, we're in the barn now, in this wonderful 20-year-old barn?
22-year-old barn, yes, built in 1900.
Right in 1900, so going on 123 years
It
now.
is. It is.
Yeah.
This is just wonderful, and I look at the beams up here, and I see this is a very sturdily built barn.
It is. It is. We drive our tractors upstairs. They come in, and it doesn't hurt anything. So it's really well built.
Yeah.
This is really something that was an added benefit when you bought it. When you started out, you weren't expecting to have a historical barn on your property.
No.
No, but as Ron said before, the barn was on a separate lot. When they took this 50-acre farm and split it into housing lots, this was a separate lot from our house. So if we didn't buy this, first of all, we would have had neighbors that close to our house, and second of all, they would have probably torn this barn down to build a house. So I fell in love with the barn as much as I fell in love with the house.
Yeah,
so I
for
think
sure.
I think we actually bought the barn, and then we took the house to go with it. And our kids would agree with that decision.
I'm sure they had a great time.
Oh, yeah.
in the
Lots of
barn
birthday
here.
parties upstairs.
Upstairs.
Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about the sheep that are here.
Okay. Alrighty. We have basically 2 types of sheep here. We have the wool sheep that are the black-faced, and the white-faced sheep are The breed is called a Katahdin sheep. It's named after Mount Katahdin in Maine. They are an American breed. They were crossed with several different sheep. They are disease resistant, and they are hair sheep. They don't have wool. They will shed just like a horse would shed in the summertime. The wool sheep, on the other hand, they do have wool, and we have to have somebody come in every year to shear them.
So,
And we saw quite a few lambs when we came in.
Yes, yeah.
I noticed that some of them were white. There are some that are multicolored.
well, we have two kinds of sheep. We have essentially white sheep and black-faced sheep, and we have two rams, one of each. And we don't control who breeds with who. So if you see the white lambs, they're probably a Katahdin mother and a Katahdin father. If you see an all-black sheep, that's probably a Suffolk ewe with a Suffolk ram. If you see black and white, one of the Katahdin ram has made it with one of the Suffolk sheep, or vice versa. So we have all kinds of mixes here. So
Well, how did you learn to raise sheep?
go ahead.
Well, after we ended up with the 3 sheep, we decided that we wanted to know how to raise sheep. And at the time, the OARDC in Worcester had a sheep clinic. It was like 2 nights, like 3 or 4 hours. And the first night we were in the OARDC building, the classroom building, and there were 2, a father and son veterinarian that gave us the course. And they taught us about feeding them, they taught us about medicating them, and they talked about caring for the sheep, and they talked about birthing sheep. Then the following week when we came, back then they had experimental barns in Worcester for sheep, and we actually were involved with the different procedures that we would have to do with the sheep.
Giving shots and such.
Giving shots, and if you'll notice, the black-faced sheep don't have tails. The white sheep do, and the difference is that the Katahdin sheep know how to lift their tail, and
Like most of the animals we know, like dogs and cats, when they have to go to the bathroom, will lift their tail. The Suffolks wouldn't, so you would just end up with pardon my English, a poopy mess if you didn't. So it's traditional to cut off the tails of Suffolk lambs when they're babies, and they don't really feel it. It's not bad. Mm-hmm. So we had these two vets that taught us how to do it humanely.
Right.
They were very much into doing it the right way, and how to medicate them and take care of them when they were born. So that's how we learned about it. We went to a course.
yep.
Well, that was probably a big surprise to you.
It was. I was doing things I never thought I would be doing. So
That's right.
yeah.
What were the first years like?
Cold. Unfortunately, I don't know if we've said this, but especially the Suffolk sheep, they are what are called closed breeders, which means they only breed once a year. And traditionally, they breed when it gets cold at night. So when it first starts frosting, like in September and October, that's when they breed. Unfortunately, that means that their lambs are going to be born in January, February, March. So there's not much you can do about it. They're closed breeders. That's when they breed. The Katahdins are what are called open breeders, which means they can breed any time of the year. But for some reason, our sheep are still breeding so that all of our lambs are born in. We've gotten a little earlier. Now we're December, January, February. So,
Yeah. Although this year we take our adult sheep down to graze in Virginia, and we ended up with 5 surprise lambs this year.
yeah, we're not sure what's going on. We're getting lambs all times of the year now.
Yeah.
But we're still getting them now. We have 6 so far this year. As I was saying earlier, 2 of them, a little set of twins, were born during our horrible cold weather, which we were amazed that they survived. Just a note, when baby lambs are born, they have to get up and eat like in the first half hour. If they don't, they won't make it. They'll freeze. So these little guys are born, the mother licks them to sort of get the blood circulating. they get up and they find food. And if that doesn't happen, then we end up bottle feeding them in the house. That's what usually happens.
So do they nurse when they're right after they're born, or do they actually eat?
No, they nurse. They get up. Yeah. They get up almost right away. As soon as the mom starts licking them off, stimulates their muscles, they're able to stand up, and then they start looking for nursing. The first day, all they get is colostrum, but they need that to clear out their intestinal systems. And then the milk comes in the second day, but they start nursing right away.
Yeah. Or they need to start nursing right away, so yeah.
When we came into the barn and we saw them, those little lambs are so frisky and good on their feet, on their legs.
Oh, they are immediately. I mean, it's they have very strong legs. That's one thing. And they're not today, but sometimes I call them little springs. They just spring around the barn and run chasing each other. So right now we have quite a few sheep. This is a bigger group, and because they're lambing, we've got them locked in the barn. If they could be outside, they would run even more. So they're sort of confined in here. So yeah.
Yeah, they look so healthy, and it must be from the good care that you're giving them.
Well, thank you very much. We try. We have good stock. Our ewes are good mothers. I'd say if we've learned anything over the years, it's we need to let nature be a little bit more in charge. Early on, we tried to get involved. We were worried, and we wanted to be there when they were born, and we would try to help, and that just confused the mothers. And now we have ewes that are really good at taking care of their lambs.
Yeah, one of the things that we were taught was that when a ewe was getting close to giving birth, that you should separate her, put her in a separate pen, so she could give birth, and then her lambs could nurse without any interruption. It turned out that we really didn't know exactly when it was that they were going to be giving birth, and some of those poor ewes were stuck in those pens for 2 or 3 weeks. And sheep are flock animals. They don't like to be separated, and it put more stress on the ewe being separated than it would have just allowing them to give birth wherever they want to, whenever they want to.
And somehow the other sheep know. I mean, we've never had lambs. You'd think with this many sheep in here that the lambs would get trampled or whatever by the bigger sheep. But when the mother gives birth, it's like the other sheep just stay away from her and let her take care of her lambs. So we don't lose lambs that way. So it's really great.
And they don't mind the cold weather. I mean, obviously, all of you watching from home, you can tell with our jackets and our boots and gloves and all, that it's cold out here today. This is January.
Yeah.
And the sheep seem to be perfectly fine.
I would tell you, if you would walk over and put your fingers down in the wool on that sheep, it is so warm under there next to their skin. I mean, they stay warm. They don't have skin on their feet. They have hooves. So they're very, very warm. I worried about the lambs when it was so cold, but I would come out here and check them frequently, and they were fine. They sort of huddle up together against the wall and sleep next to each other, so they stay warm. So,
well, if there's anybody who's watching who maybe has had a dream of raising sheep or livestock or anything like that, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, sheep are a lot easier to raise than like cows, larger animals. They are smaller animals compared to that. You have to really appreciate their demeanor, what they're like. For instance, the flocking idea. Just quickly, I've got a story that sort of outlines that. Several years ago, we had to buy a couple more ewes from a man in Ashland County. He happens to be the man who comes and shears our sheep. He wasn't going to be home. I just was going to go by myself with my trailer, pick up the 2 ewes. He had them separated in the barn. I went in the barn and I went to grab one of the ewes, and she jumped the fence and she ran outside because I hadn't closed the door. And I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to do? I'm in the middle of Ashland County by myself. How am I going to get this ewe back? And I walk outside the barn, and the barn had a gate opening on the other side of the barn where she could see in. And all of a sudden, I see she's looking in that barn and trying to figure out how to get back into the barn. She does not want to be by herself. So I walked around her, and she immediately ran away from me, ran around the barn, and ran right back in again. And that time I closed the door and I got her and put her in the trailer.
And that makes sheep easier to keep because they don't go flying off away from each other. They stay together. So if you can get the flock moving in the right direction, they're all going to go. Of course, if you're trying to get them to go somewhere and they don't want to go that way, none of them are going to go. So it sort of works both ways. But
So they do have minds of their own.
they have minds of their own, but it's a flock mentality. So they like to be together.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of RSVP and hope you'll have a wonderful day and join us again. Thank you so much. For RSVP, I'm Irma Baker.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.